love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running.
Okay, welcome back to another edition of the Coach's Corner. This is Baseball Lifer. I am Walter Beede, and you might be asking again, what is a baseball lifer? Who is a baseball lifer? Someone that's been in the game of baseball for approximately 56 years, as a player, student athlete, head coach, most importantly, as a dad. And so we like to answer questions from parents from around the country, share their answers with you so that you may find yourself with a similar question, and hopefully we can provide you with some answers. As always, if you like the video, please give it a like and always subscribe so that you can be up to date with all of the latest information and resources as it pertains to youth baseball, travel baseball, and obviously college recruiting. This morning, we are joined by Scott from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Welcome, Scott.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us. And let's get started. And why don't you fire off a question and see if I can give you some help with that?
Yeah, I would say, my question really comes, around do youth players need to take a break from baseball? At what age should they maybe concentrate only on baseball? I have a 9-year-old who plays ball. He plays a little travel ball, does basketball, wrestling, flag football, all those wonderful other sports, and he enjoys them. And we're able to fit it in now that he's able to do baseball year round. But I guess my question is, what are your thoughts on baseball year round and kind of arm use and those types of things?
Yeah, really, as a whole, growing up in the Northeast, up in the greater Boston area, similar climate to Pittsburgh, I would imagine. And as I've alluded to before, my sons, were hockey players, basketball players, football players, you name it, soccer, they did it, especially when they were young. I'm a very big fan of letting kids be kids, and really the year-round baseball model, for the most part, prior to the age of, say, 15 or 16, is more of a business model than anything else. The repetitions that they're getting in the fall, they're somewhat limited. You're sharing fields with soccer and football, et cetera. But for the most part, as a 9 through, let's say, 13-year-old, you really want them to be in full kid mode, full having fun with their buddies, go where they want to go, do what they want to do, and kind of get the enjoyment of being around their friends. As far as the arm usage is concerned, the rule of thumb in the Northeast is always try to get those 2 to 3 months, giving the arm a break. As they get older and they become more conditioned, they get a little bit stronger. At that time, you can begin to think about, creating a throwing program, not a pitching, but a playing catch on a more regular basis. But at 9 years old, I tend to stress, let the kids be kids. Don't worry about, they're not missing anything. They're becoming well-rounded athletes by playing with their friends in other sports, participating in other recreational events, whether it's dodgeball or tag or what have you. Flag football is great for agility. Same thing with soccer, wrestling. You're learning, you're giving your brain a rest as it pertains to baseball. And the number one thing, Scott, that I want you to understand is baseball all year round begins to become stressful for a lot of younger student athletes because they equate failure with letting people down, whether it's their family, their friends, their coaches. And so letting them understand and having some success in other sports, it does a few things. It builds camaraderie. It builds the emphasis on being a part of the team, but more importantly, about being part of a community with their friends and their friends' parents and their coaches. And so for me personally, as a dad, I used to always look at those other sports as becoming a part of the fabric of their local town or community. And I think you'll find that putting the ball down will create some, they'll be excited when when the spring rolls around or the late winter rolls around and they're rolling into, the prototypical baseball season mode. So especially fall and winter. Let the baseball kind of sit for a while until they get to about that sophomore year in high school. And then they start to say, I don't know about football, or I don't know about basketball, or whatever the other sport may be. And then they can begin to train if they really feel that baseball is in their future.
Oh, no, that's great insight there. You know, he is a bit of a baseball nut, and he loves it. You know, this year he decided not to do tackle football. I let him make the decision, but he didn't want to do tackle football because he still wanted to play fall baseball. And you know, tackle football and fall, tackle football, you have to be there for every practice. So it's, you know, Monday through Friday and games on Saturday. So, you know, I just didn't think it'd be fair if he did both. So he's doing flag, and he's okay with that, but he does see his buddies playing tackle. So I think next year he's going to want to play tackle. But Walter, he you know, he's got, you know, a little net in the garage that he hits, and you know, he throws balls off the wall in the garage really year round. We were doing a long toss program really, I'd say at the end of August, you know, beginning of this month here, just to kind of wind down his season a little bit. But no, it's very insightful, and you know, we're a part of it's a travel group here, and you I think you might know him. It's Matt Paluski at PBS.
Oh yes, I know Matt.
Yeah, so he does. So he works with Matt, and it's, you know, it's a bit of a different travel model. It's really about developing the kids. So we're excited the path that he's on. We're excited, you know, the other sports that he's involved with. But I really appreciate, you know, your insight on the travel community, and we've seen more of that. You know, just getting involved with baseball more, is you do see a lot of families jumping from program to program, and that tells me a lot. That tells me that maybe there isn't development that's truly going on, and it is a big business. You know, these organizations are making a lot of money.
Well, if you really get down to the root of it, people like Matt, you know, I never try to paint the canvas with the big, thick, broad brush. When you're younger, 9, 10, 11, you do see a lot of families jumping from one program to the next. Typically, that means that they're either not getting to play of choice, getting a time, those ages to keep the sport fun. And you want to become, and I know Matt believes in this pretty aggressively, you want the practice to outweigh the games, meaning don't get so caught up in the tournaments and the rings and the trophies and stature. You really want to make sure that they're getting a lot of repetitions, like with what you're doing. If your son is saying, hey, Dad, I'm going to throw this ball against the wall, or I can play catch with you, whatever you want to do. That was kind of like my youngest. He was always pulling me, hey, Dad, grab your glove. You know, I want to play catch. Those types of things are great. It's when it becomes, okay, we have to go to practice, or we have a doubleheader Saturday, a game on Sunday, and it gets into the fall. You start to look around when you're 9 or 10 and your buddies are starting to hang out with the football. You know, it's football season, so some of your friends are going to hang out over the house with those guys that are playing football or soccer or lacrosse. You just want to keep the game fun, entertaining, as well as a learning environment where they're getting those repetitions so that they begin to get more athletic and more fluid. So obviously a guy like Matt knows that, and I'm sure he's keeping it fun.
Yeah, as far as, you know, youth practices, what do you think's a good length? You know, is it an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? Because you might only have one day a week to practice with the boys. When do you find, you know, is it after an hour and a half they just start to lose interest?
Yeah, pretty much after about, I would say a 90-minute practice, if there's a good warm-up involved, is about the proper length for boys under the age of 12. You know, because the repetition becomes kind of like, okay, my retention rate is beginning to slip because my mind is not involved and I'm starting to think about other things. And their attention span, especially at those ages, you know, they're fast paced. You know, they're on for a little bit and then they tune out. And so you want to get them in a competitive mode after they're warmed up, get it creative and competitive, and then get it done and over with. And they're going to learn better in those bursts as opposed to the 2 and 3 hour practices, which you're kind of dragging them to the finish line, so to speak. You want them to finish a practice with some enthusiasm so that they're looking forward to the next practice opportunity. So when you get a little bit of a competitive situation going in practice, whether that's throwing balls to a target, whether it's who can hit the ball the furthest, things like that, who can put the most bunts down, they get engaged and they get involved. When it's not a competitive environment, they're going to start to tune out pretty quickly. So 90 minutes is about that magic threshold for any boy below the age of 12. Once they get older and the practices get more set up with regard to station work and they're moving from station to station, it's that 2.5 hour window that you start to put those guys in. But that's a long way off for a 9-year-old.
Right. And I guess, the last question is again, for youth players, is the mental side of baseball. And growing up, I never trained, or I never was taught the mental side. It was, kind of shake it off and just move on. What do you suggest there? Something I always say to the kids is breathe, just take a deep breath and breathe. But beyond that, I'm not quite sure how to guide, 9, 10, 11-year-olds with the mental side of the game.
So here's what I used to do, especially when my boys were really little. I would always, when they were big into baseball cards, I would always hand out, I would ask who their favorite players were. And I'd try to get a few different players that they would mention. And I'd hand out a bunch of baseball cards to the kids, really early in the season. But with my boys, we'd sit at the dinner table and we'd go through baseball cards. And, they'd be all excited about getting a Manny Ramirez or David Ortiz or what have you. And I'd say, okay, let's turn the cards over. Let's look at some of their statistics. And then I'd say, well, Manny Ramirez struck out 100 times. Oh, he made this amount of errors. And so what I would get them to understand is even at the game's highest level with their favorite players, there are going to be moments of disappointment. And the only thing that really matters is being involved and engaged for the next play, meaning there's nothing we can do. If we get a bad grade in school, we can study harder and get ready for the next test. And that's essentially what baseball is. And so the disappointment surrounding the last play tends to be more from little ones feeling like they're letting somebody down. And so once you let them know you're not letting anyone down, as long as you're going out and you're giving your best, if you strike out, it's okay. If you make an error, nobody wants to make an error, but it's going to happen. It's okay. We're a team. You're part of a team. We're going to move forward. And if you have that kind of perspective, it's not the equipment's fault. It's not the umpire's fault. It's not the other team's fault. It simply happens within the sport. It's a part of the game. Without it, it really wouldn't be much fun if everybody got up and hit a home run every time. So once you get, especially young children, to understand you're not letting anybody down, you didn't fail. What did you learn from that? And let's take that into the next play or the next opportunity, because strikeouts are no different than a pop-up or a ground ball out or a fly ball out. They're simply an out, and that's it. And so an error doesn't mean you're incapable of making a play. It just means you didn't make that play. So let's look forward to the next play. And as long as they understand the word next, okay, we're going to keep fighting through it. We're going to keep working. We're going to keep competing. Let's look forward to the next play. Want the ball hit to you next time. Don't worry about you're not letting anyone down. So it's a tough hurdle, because in other sports like lacrosse and soccer, hockey, football, a bunch of people running around and nobody really recognizes who did well that play or didn't do that well that play, unless you're a running back scoring a touchdown or quarterback throwing a touchdown. But with baseball, it's that spotlight dynamic. And so you have to get them to understand the spotlight is okay. If you're a pitcher and you walk someone, if you're a hitter and you're up at the plate and you strike out, it's okay. You're going to get another opportunity. Let's just cheer on the rest of the team. Let's be involved in the rest of the game, and don't worry about it. We'll move forward. You're going to get another opportunity. So keep it positive in that perspective. But the baseball card drill is really one that really works well. And so kids can see that some of the better players, even at the major league level, they fail, they make mistakes, they make errors, and they just simply move forward. They don't look back.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. And that was the Derek Jeter special. And he was talking about I think it was his rookie year. He had, I don't know, 56 or 65 errors. And he was ready to hang it up. So I try to use that as an example. And then I think it was Freddie Freeman I think it was the World Series. I think he was like 0 for 8 with like 4 strikeouts. And then the next game he came back, it was 3 for 4 with maybe a home run. So that's a tough concept for the little guys is understanding failure and dealing with it. Because you fail 70% of the time in this sport and you're still doing pretty well.
Right. And the biggest thing is when they're little, to just let them know they're not letting their parents down. They're not letting their teammates down. It's going to happen to everybody. Don't worry about it. Let's get ready and excited for the next opportunity. And so those little ones that watch more games, and when you can talk them through, bases loaded, 2 outs, and then there's a strikeout. See, now look, that's an opportunity. He didn't take advantage of it, but you know what? He's going to be able to come back up in another part of the game and help his team win. So I tend to focus on that stuff more than I do, and the other part of it is parents in the stands can be brutal. And you really have to understand what that sounds like to a 9-year-old when they're playing tournament baseball. So.
Yeah. No, we had a situation where a kid, he struck out twice in the game and he was beside himself on the bench crying. And tried to comfort him and his response was, my dad's going to be so mad. And that was tough to deal with. And it was, I tried to tell him, I'm going to be honest, buddy, it doesn't matter what your dad thinks. It's your teammates in here and your coaches, and we know you're trying, and sometimes you don't succeed, and sometimes you strike out, but you just got to move on to the next pitch. So that was a tough one to see.
You absolutely nailed it there. There's a lot of information when a little boy says, my dad's going to be really upset. At the end of the day, that's the crux of what goes through most little boys and girls and when they're playing sports. And if they feel like they failed, that they are going to let someone down.
Yeah.
And if you can kind of temper that before any athletic competitive event, go out, have fun, be a part of the team, help your team win. But most of all, just go out and enjoy yourself, have some fun participating in the game. Easier said than done. I know, but at the end of the day, the little ones are like computers. They're like little laptops. As soon as they feel like they're getting overstressed, they begin to kind of shut down, and you see that circle spinning in the middle of their eyes because they know they're trying to compute. Okay, I just stopped. I just made an error, and I know my dad's going to ask me about that. So they just shut themselves down and they don't go forward, with the rest of the game. So it's important for parents to recognize those moments and just have a conversation when they're ready to have a conversation. In other words, it's not when you get in the car and say, hey, what happened, buddy? Just let them get in the car. And if they acknowledge and say, hey, I made an error, you have to be able to say, it's okay. Don't worry about it. It's part of the game. It's going to happen. You can't pick and choose when those times happen, but, just continue to have fun and be a part of your team and help your team win. You'll find that they'll respond better the next time that happens.
Yeah.
Scott, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And I appreciate questions because, to be honest with you, that's the first time we've answered those, and they really needed to be asked because parents need to hear those types of questions, especially at the age levels that you referred to today. So thank you very much. Go Pirates, go Steelers, go
Yes,
Penguins. And I appreciate your time. And for parents out there, if you have any comments on today's interview, please put them at the bottom. I'll answer them. Each and every one I'll answer. Make sure you subscribe, follow on Twitter, Baseball Lifer 11. Make sure that you share this with family and friends that are within the baseball world. And until next time, have fun in baseball.